All right, and I think we are live. Hey everyone, I'm super stoked to have a really diverse panel of different conferences represented here. Hopefully you're here because you're wondering, like, how do I volunteer? And if I volunteer to volunteer, what the heck am I going to be doing? So we're going to be trying to cover here exactly what some conferences, and as I said, we have a bunch of different conferences represented, mean when they say they want you to be the room host, the Master of Ceremonies. Sometimes the Speaker Wrangler has to also do some emceeing. Diana Initiative calls it the room host duties. So what is it when you're volunteering for that role, and what might you end up having to do? And so I'm going to pop through the panel here and get everyone to introduce themselves. Let's start with Sarah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're involved in the volunteering for conference community, and when you've done emceeing, sort of what was expected of you?
Yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Sarah. I've emceed a few different types of events. So the main one I've probably been involved in is Artifacts. So it was a mental health and tech conference where we ran it in 2018 and 2020. If you think about it long enough, you'll probably find out why that's particularly significant. I've also done a lot of like speaker wrangling. I've done like smaller things where I've been in a room at a conference and I've introduced whatever speakers in that room, as well as like the whole event. Let's see, what else? Types of ranges of things that I've been involved in. Like with Artifacts, we had a lot of, like it's one track. So it's one big, long, only one person speaking at a time. So I got to go up and introduce the next speaker. And then when they were done, kind of either guide to the next speaker or kind of, give them something to ponder about as they went off to a break or lunch or whatever like that. For other things, it was just a lot of figuring out who the speaker was, kind of get their bio, make sure I know how to say their name correctly, things like that. And then just introduce them before they were actually give their talk. And then some speaker wrangling is just, hi, we have this next person. They're on in 10 minutes. Where are they? You over there, get over here. Hurry up. you're in this room right here. Go hurry up and do your, cat wrangling, cat herding, as I've heard it called before too. Those are probably like the main, like main things, I think.
Cats are easier to wrangle than speakers are.
Sometimes.
Definitely true. And Mancy, can you tell us a little bit about your volunteering stuff and what you've gotten to do when wrangling the speakers?
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Mancy and I've been volunteering at conferences for over 5 years now. And that includes from established conferences like RSA and DEF CON to actually creating my own conference at B-Sides San Diego. And I'll echo a lot of things that Sarah said, right? But it's just essentially is to make the speaker's life easier, right? So whether that's giving them a high five or a bottle of water, whatever it is that they prefer, even after the conference or their track has ended, kind of following up with them on their experience, right? Just making that end-to-end process go well has been my thing. So yeah, I think I call them or like herding pandas. I don't know if you've seen these videos, right, on YouTube, where they're like, no, wait, I just need to clean this up. No, I'll just go do this. So, but obviously they're very nice people. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite volunteer positions because you get to say hi to everyone, right? You get to expand your network, which is one of the pros of volunteering, apart from the swag that you get that's a little bit different than just attending. Yeah, that's my experience.
So if we see people in panda onesies volunteering, we're going to thank you. All right, Maggie, can you tell us a little bit about what you've done for volunteering and how you feel you had to run things when you were doing MC duties?
Sure. I have done a very wide array of different volunteer responsibilities at both conferences and meetups. Some of my conference volunteering roles within the last year have included bag stuffing at the last in-person conference I went to, a ton of emceeing and speaker wrangling, of course. I really like to do help desk for virtual conferences. I have done CFP review. I've done speaker mentoring, kind of the whole gamut. One of my favorites, though, is emceeing because, like Mansi mentioned, you get to meet so many people. You get to talk to the speakers, especially if there is a speaker wrangling component. You often get to spend a couple minutes with the speaker beforehand and afterwards. You can sneak in those extra questions if there's something you want to learn extra about in somebody's talk. it is a super fun way to get to interact and become a part of the community. And I've used this as a way to get involved in a ton of different communities. You don't have to pick just one conference and be that conference's volunteer. You can go all kinds of places. Within the last year, I volunteered at B-Sides SF, Red Team Village, IntroSecCon, kind of ongoing volunteering, Circle City Con, the Diana Initiative, and a bunch of others, as well as serving as one of the chapter organizers for the Bay Area Write the Docs meetup. So you've got lots of opportunities to go take these skills to other events and get involved with a wide variety of different communities that are focused on all the different things that you're interested in. It doesn't have to be just one conference or just security conferences or just dev conferences. You can transfer these skills very easily to a wide variety of areas.
And for anybody who's seen Kathleen's talks, you can also take those skills and stick them on your resume. So if anybody needs resume fodder, this is a good way to get it. All right, Brandon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I started volunteering in a sense when I switched from, I used to be a teacher, and then my first job in cybersecurity was at a nonprofit named EnergySec that put on a conference every year. So it wasn't really volunteering in the sense that it was my job, but had to do all the behind the scenes type stuff at EnergySec when we would do our conference. And then started going to B-Sides and DEF CON, and I went 1 year. And after the first year, I wanted to get a little more involved. And I'm the kind of person who, if I'm up on a stage or in front of a group, then that's fine. I can talk. I've done a lot of public speaking. But if I'm in a group that's just like 100 people just kind of milling around, I will be the guy that's on the back wall, just kind of watching everybody else. And so that's one way to get me kind of out of my comfort zone, is to get involved. So that's one of the things that drew me to volunteering in the first place. And then I've done speaker ops at B-Sides, and I've done room host. They call it at B-Sides Las Vegas. They call it the room host rather than emceeing. And the one thing that I really like about being a room host is that you get to see all the talks, especially at B-Sides Las Vegas. I always tried to do room host for some underground talks, because those are the ones that don't get recorded and everything. And so you can volunteer, get that, get all of the benefits of that, but then also see kind of those things that nobody else is able to see. And then Sky Talks is kind of the same thing. I volunteered once at the last in-person DEF CON at Sky Talks, because somebody in the B-Sides chat was like, hey, we need somebody to do speaker ops at Sky Talks. Can anybody do it on this time slot? And I said, well, I can. So that got me into Sky Talks without having to stand in a line for 2.5 hours and stuff. And so that kind of stuff is a lot of that stuff. You meet people and everything and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what drew me to volunteering.
Oh, come on. Our line cons are epic.
Well, when we can have lines again, they will be epic once again. So, Jives, can you give us kind of your rundown? Because I know you've done a lot of virtual and in-person over the past couple of years.
Yeah. Well, my name is Jives. I started actually doing it as a line grunt at Sky Talks. And, then I kind of hung around a while, and then I was enforcer. Then, Circus Hall needed somebody to kind of help take on some of the stuff. So I was like, sure, I'll do speaker operations. Unlike everybody else here, I am not good in front of a crowd. I'm like, I get nervous. I'm like, I don't know what to fucking say. I'm sorry, but I just can't. I'm not good at it. But I do like working with the speakers. So I got into working with the speakers as like a back of the house sort of thing. Other than that, I do CFPs for about 5 different conferences. I'm one of the organizers for IntroSecCon, which is coming up on the 17th. IntroSecCon, actually, I can't remember our web address. So IntroSecCon, Twitter, you'll find it. So, like I said, my specialty tends to be with, the speaker operations and kind of herding the cats.
And I would have to say, interestingly, the cats at Sky Talks get more easily distracted because there's other things for them to go.
Squirrel!
Yeah. And last but not least, Blue, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Blue Knight, and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, wait, wrong meeting. So I'm Blue Knight. You may know me from events such as ShmooCon. I'm actually wearing a ShmooCon shirt this evening, where I have worked labs for over 10 years, and the last in-person ShmooCon, I was fortunate enough to actually be given a staff badge. I'm not certain if Bruce and Heidi will make that mistake again. I've also worked other events in the B-Sides realm, B-Sides DC and Delaware, as operations staff primarily. And as a lot of you who have volunteered previously know, when you're working events and you're wearing one of the event staff t-shirts, you're kind of expected to represent the event in and of itself. So whenever you're wearing an event shirt, especially something that says staff or volunteer on the back, you're expected to be on duty. I am a DerbyCon staff alumnus from security operations there, which was fun. And I think the biggest thing that everyone knows me from is, of course, Sky Talks, where I have been boots on the ground since we started back at DEF CON 16. And I have been the executive director for the past 10, 11 years now. So the buck stops with me. And that means I get to do a little bit of everything. The first few years, it literally was pretty much everything, but actually running the CFP. So I was doing speaker ops. I was managing the lines. I mean, those first few years were kind of insane. And that's when I started bringing volunteers in because I needed other people to help. But as it's expanded out, it's been a lot of fun. I think the last in-person Sky Talks, which was 27, we had drives about 90, 100 volunteers.
Yeah, something like that. It's gotten really big.
Yeah, it's gotten insane, and I have been told by several people that I am effectively running my own con now, and that.
We still have to pay for the floor space.
Not yet. Not yet. I keep wondering when Jeff's going to be sending us the bill. But when I got started in the hacker community, which now for me is about, the in-person community, which is now like 22, 23 years ago, you'd told me that I would be a minor to moderate hacker celebrity running my own event right now, I would have told you were crazy. I think I still would tell you that you're crazy, but here I am. I've got a lot of great people supporting me, a couple of whom are on the seminar with us this afternoon, and it's been a lot of fun. It has been probably one of the most fulfilling things that I have done in my professional career, quite honestly, and I can't thank all of you enough. It's also kind of funny that Brandon mentions using MC duties, etc., for resume fodder. I'm actually using this seminar for resume fodder because I just went up for promotion, and I'm actually listing this as one of my speaking credits. So I am going to practice the first rule of Hacker Jeopardy this evening, and hopefully I won't fuck it up.
Which is a pretty good rule. I feel like it should be one of those little bracelet reminders. All right, now that we kind of know who everyone is, we're going to dive into some questions, which will hopefully give you all some interesting stories about things that have happened in the course of everyone doing their MC duties. And first thing I kind of want to find out about is, like, how exactly when you volunteer do you get trained or told what to do, and what do you wish somebody had done for you that didn't happen? So Brandon, can you tell us a little bit about that for some of your events?
Yeah, so Probably the most room hosting I've done is at B-Sides Las Vegas. I've done that for maybe 4 or 5 years now, and they're a little bit more organized than maybe a local Houston local con that I went to one time. So it just kind of the more bigger the organization, the more organized it might be. But even at B-Sides, it was really just a text doc or a Word doc that they had it printed out, and I actually took the documentation that they had and I put it on my phone so that I kind of had it with me all the time. And then they kind of have their main things they want you to do. So at a conference like B-Sides, the reason why you can have a larger conference like that, which is still free and for the most part, is that you have vendors who are paying for the hotel space and all that kind of stuff. And so at B-Sides, that was one things that they hammered in you was make sure you say these are who the sponsors are. So that I would always want to get that into the little spiel. B-Sides, again, being a larger conference, it had kind of segregated roles. And so as a room host, I did not need to go and clear the rooms after a talk, or it wasn't my responsibility. I mentioned the underground talk at B-Sides where they don't allow electronics to be out, and they made a point of saying the first time I did that, it's not my job to police that, but I can, if I see something, I can just talk to a security person because they really did kind of have those segregated roles, and you do what you are told to and what you should do, and everything flows smoothly if everybody is doing their job. Luckily, I never had any incidents like that in those talks. But then there's other places. I know when I was doing the Energy Sec conference, when I was helping put those on, we just got somebody who was outgoing, and we knew who knew 60% of the people in the room to be the MC, because we knew that they could carry the conversation. And there's 1 or 2 times that I can remember where we had somebody who they weren't as kind of outgoing as we thought they would be and stuff, and it didn't work as well. But then when you find somebody, we ended up finding a few people who were really good at that, and those are the people who kind of get asked back repeatedly. And then I did a speaker ops for a B-Sides in Texas one time, where I volunteered at it because I had a work trip to Texas the next week, and I was like, oh, they have a B-Sides conference the day before my presentation, my work thing. Maybe if I can get my boss to pay for an extra night in the hotel room, maybe I'll see if I can get into the conference. And there was no tickets available, but I emailed them and said, hey, can I volunteer? And they said, yeah, sure. And I got thrown into the speaker ops. And smaller conferences, it was really just kind of like hang out in the back room and talk to the speakers. Most of them, because you're not taking out a whole wing of a hotel or anything like that. The speakers generally knew where the talks were and stuff like that. So it was really a lot more low key. But so there just wasn't as much training that was necessary. But then you just kind of try to find them on the speaker ops side, try to find them like 15 minutes before the talk. So if you don't see the speaker and they're supposed to be presenting in 15 or 20 minutes, then that's when you have the stress on the speaker ops side, because you have to go try to figure out where they are. And sometimes it's just because they're running a couple minutes late. And then I can remember one incident where the person was just flaked out. And this was not the Texas one, but we had somebody just flake out, and the room host had to kind of like fill about 10 or 15 minutes. And I was on speaker ops that time. So I wasn't the one having to fill that time, but that's the kind of stuff that might happen. Things are going to go wrong. If you have enough speakers, then you're going to get somebody who's unprofessional or flakes out or decides to
hey,
go.
We've been there. And how about people who actually strip on your stage?
I did not see one.
Yeah, we
It's
had
happened.
that Sky Talks a few years ago. The only time that we really screwed up.
I'll leave this screwed up there and not go with the really off-color joke that I'm thinking about.
No, that was a different conference.
But yeah, and then Sky Talks. I mean, you guys have been doing it for, I don't know, 10 years or something, and so, and I've seen your MC. It's a little different personality than me. I don't know that I have the personality to be up there yelling about smashing phones and stuff. But when you have people who have that with their personality, they somebody who's got experience, they can handle weird things like that.
Yeah, something. Put your money in the bucket. Which is funny. This is the shared bucket too. This is the original bucket.
So yeah, for events that need money, sometimes the MC has to gather stuff. So Brandon, I think you bring up a really great point about like shenanigans happening and speakers not showing and having to vamp and fill that time, and how sometimes that may be your responsibility. So you should be aware of that before you start. But yeah, I think we can probably roll into kind of the next question, which is you were explaining all the different responsibilities you have and what skills really are necessary in this case to maybe handle unexpected consequences. And Monty, do you have some good things to tell us about what kind of skills you can use?
Yeah, I don't know, good things, but I think the number one is to keep that calm demeanor. Like that is an underrated but very much useful skill to have, because you see that conference in general, right? Most of the people are going to be volunteers, or they're going to be new, or however that is. And so, and things run at like high intensity, right? Even if it's just for the 5 minutes before a speaker goes on, and then after that, everyone's like laughing again for like the hour that the speaker's on the stage. But keeping that calmness, keeping that rooted in terms of like, it's okay, like let's be solution oriented instead of like freaking out, because no one needs that. With that same thing, understanding the speakers and the other volunteers, I think that's very key. I think you can do it both, whether it's in person or virtual. You know, I've had some conferences where they'll help me, include me in the CCs of like the initial like outreach type thing, and they'll be like, oh, here's Bonsi, she's gonna help bring you on board or something like that. And that way I get to spend more time, I understand them. There'll be other conferences where it's like, no, this is the speaker, and I'll just get the program, like the agenda, and I have to be like, wait, who is this person? Then here's Twitter and like LinkedIn. So having some sort of like OSINT skills would also be helpful sometimes. Then same thing with knowing other volunteers, right? So other people in your team of speaker wranglers, or if there are other like speaker ops. I know Brandon mentioned that there are two separate teams in that, right? Just understanding who you can rely on and not just being one person, because that one person that's either the volunteer coordinator or your point of contact for when you wanted to reach out to the organization, they're already going to be so overwhelmed. So the more proactive kind of roll up the sleeves attitude you have, I think it'll make that experience better for you. It'll make that experience better for the speakers and the conference organizers. And then it just makes it more fun, right? Like a good experience, it makes it more fun. I think all of that side aside, you are basically doing PR for the conference, as Blue mentioned, right? That like when you put on the shirt, whether you have the shirt or the badge or not, and ensuring that the speaker, the attendees, the conference, like everything goes smoothly for that, even for that small section. Take pride in that, right? Because you made that part happen. And you can imagine like the kind of value that conferences have in our community is huge, whether it's providing those hands-on skills, whether it's providing just like general knowledge tidbits, right? It allows everyone to kind of come together. So having fun is huge, but I'll circle back with saying that keeping that calm demeanor And then I know everyone said not to get married to a specific conference, but in my experience, that's how I've grown. I started off with B-Side San Francisco, right? I was like just a newbie volunteer. And then over the years, I got to know them, they got to know me, trust. And now I'm handling more responsibilities. And I like it. You get to grow as like a family instead of each time learning about someone new or some team new. But yeah, that's my experience.
I really love how you mentioned like to make sure you take pride in your work over that hour, because yeah, you nailed it. You're responsible for that hour or 2 hour or 3 hour slot, and you made that happen. And it sounds like there's some social engineering tricks for like expanding your network by doing this role a little bit too.
No, definitely. And you get to like tweet them firsthand, be like, look, and then like have selfies, and like, it's definitely a great way of increasing your network.
So find the most popular person that you want to get a selfie with, be their speaker wrangler, and there you go. All the Instagram fodder you need.
Reveal all the secrets today, but yeah, definitely.
So thank you for that. And you kind of were mentioning all the different things like you had to do, and some of it, obviously applies whether it's in person or not. But I'm kind of wondering, what is the difference between in-person and virtual events, and where you kind of tease that out? And I was wondering if maybe Sarah, you could dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So with Hard Effects, the in-person version, it was the first one we had done. So it was mental health and tech. Like I said earlier, kind of one track. And the main organizer, basically, he was planning to be the MC, and then like a day and a half before it started, chickened out. So I was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. What I kind of figured out very quickly was at the event, I tracked down every speaker, usually like 2 or 3 at a time that I knew were coming up. Tried to figure out like how to say their name correctly, get their bio, just kind of maybe an interesting fact or two. And then I would, go up, hey, everybody, welcome back. Our next speaker, so-and-so, they blah, 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 blah. Please welcome so-and-so. And during the course of their talk, I was trying to I had a notepad on my lap, and I was just like, I'm not paying attention to anything but their talk. And I was kind of scribbling main thoughts and ideas I had, because the reason for that afterward, I decided, was as an outro to their talk, I wanted to say like, hey, thanks for giving your talk. I really appreciate when you talked about the whatever, And what it ended up happening was, because we had a break between every talk, it allowed people to have sort of a discussion with people they were meeting at the conference to talk about these mental health and tech things. And so giving them that idea kind of helped them like spin that up. So it was a lot of awareness of the speaker, what they were talking about, but also kind of what was happening just at the conference in general, because I also was the one delivering like announcements and what's happening next. Oh, hey, we have lunch in an hour, things like that. What flipped with virtual is we kind of instead decided not 2 long days, but I think we did like 4 or 5 days of shorter versions. So I was still the MC for all of that, but I was at home with nobody around me. Everybody was on the computer screens in front of me. So what changed with that was we had to kind of think, how are we going to do those in-person interactions? And we did a lot of those on Slack. We had 4 Zoom calls at a time. So one was the main talk, and then the other ones were people could have discussions about different talks and things like that. But for the MC part, a lot of it stayed the same. Like, I still wanted to track down all these speakers. I wanted to make sure I said their names correctly. I wanted to make sure I was consciously aware of their talks, because we decided to do a Q&A this time. So I wanted to make sure that if nobody had questions, we were doing moderated everything. So if nobody had questions, I had some already prepared. So I still had to pay attention, but I also wanted to make sure like the audience could chime in if they wanted to. So I was filtering the audience as well as paying attention to the speakers. So it's several things going. I usually had the talks in this monitor, all of Slack and everything else in this monitor. And then I kind of had like a third monitor above where I was like keeping track of like, this is the flow of everything. This is where one of the other organizers talking about like the event. And then I was doing a lot of the introductions and emceeing, and where we were going back and forth on the schedule of everything. So it was a ton of management in a very weird, like small space. And while it was a lot the same, because you're not having that direct interaction, it's a lot more difficult. So it took a lot more concentration, I feel like, because it's easy to get distracted by other applications on my computer. It's easy to get distracted by, what are my cats doing? I have 2 cats on my desk right now. It's just like really easy to pay attention to them, but I'm not. I'm, in the middle of this event, and make sure the phone is silent, make sure, there's a lot. It's a lot easier to just get sidetracked. And so it, not only do you have to have the usual consciousness of the event, but sort of, very focused on the digital space. That was probably the biggest difference between in-person and virtual. Plus it was a little bit easier on the other hand, because we had that document that we were keeping track of, like the schedule and everything. So it's very easy to scribble down notes that I or Colin, when we were going back and forth, could say to each other, like, hey, make sure you do this and you do this correctly. Make sure this name's pronounced this particular way. Make sure, oh, the speaker isn't ready yet. We may need to shift a commercial for, some other event ahead of, and it worked out really well that way. But yeah, I feel like virtually we had more trains of thought going in a very tightly controlled space. So that was probably the main difference.
Awesome. Yeah. And I love having that from the same event, having to shift over and just the difference there. And I also love how you kind of were like, yeah, you have to have the multiple monitors. Would you say that like that really is necessary if you're going to be?
It's not necessary. I think it's extremely helpful. I usually have 2. I track down a 3rd for this specific purpose, because I'm just like, I'm used to 2 windows open, like if I'm doing development and testing or whatever. But, I'm just like, there's so many things to kind of wrangle that I wanted to make sure I had easy access to, and I wasn't like flipping through applications. So I just kind of wanted the important stuff on my screen. It all sort of like a dashboard kind of conference things just available to me when I needed it.
Yeah, screen real estate is definitely important. Multiple monitors can be good, and it's a trade-off. Sometimes multiple monitors is good. I'm running multiple monitors here, and sometimes it's just monitor size. My primary here on the desktop is 43-inch display, and I've got my main master window, which I've got the conference up on, and then I've got a couple of side items here where I'm actually looking at the various channels that we're streaming to, and I'm responding to various comments in there as well.
Well, but also, like, I have a tablet, and I could easily pull up Slack on there and just monitor things. So it's like, this is 10 inches. It's not huge, but it's the additional ability to keep track of something else. So
yeah, I think during Hallway Con during New Year's Eve, I ended up having like 3 separate computers and 4 or 5 separate screens going in about 180-degree arc here. It was something bordering on insane.
The other thing
that on my end, I was just using like a phone. Like, you can, if you're quick enough with your, like, you can make it low key as well, right? So obviously Sarah and Blue have had like really extreme experiences. On mine, one laptop and just being quick with the phone works just as well. So it's definitely not necessary. You can make it whatever you're comfortable with would be, so if there's new people listening to this, don't feel like you have to go out and get all this equipment before volunteering.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can start with just a simple headset and a webcam. And you can do a lot with that. Those of us who have invested the time and money and effort into getting these huge setups here, you don't need that to be successful.
Well, don't even necessarily need that much. We were talking before the call about how I don't actually have an external mic, and my headset is one that I prefer not to wear when I'm going to be on video. It's not cute, and that still hasn't really seemed to cause any problems. I checked the audio quality afterwards. I haven't seen any issues. I use my laptop with its built-in webcam and its built-in microphone, and I do use a second monitor, but it's for a trick that I don't want to derail with right now.
And then I guess one thing I thought of that I want to, I don't want to focus all on equipment. One thing I forgot to mention was, when you're in person, I feel like it's easier to kind of like hype up speakers and, you can run around stage. And do things like that. When you're virtual, I have a tiny window. I can slide, like I don't have much wiggle room. So it's a lot harder to, in the virtual space, try to keep people engaged, which is one of those things, like even as we're going right now, I'm just hoping like all these comments, like I hope nobody fell asleep while we're talking. So that was kind of difficult. So I would suggest, like anything you can do to keep it interesting. So, swapping back and forth between two speakers can maybe help, visual things on screen, to, just people that are more visually stimulated as opposed to audio stimulated, just anything you can do to make that in-person to virtual transition a little easier.
Yeah, the one thing that I've seen is that when you have places that have multiple tracks, it gets really hard in virtual to have that sort of, jumping from one to the other, because a lot of them you're like on, you have multiple Zoom sessions or something. And at that point, it becomes really difficult if you don't have more than one computer. So if you only have one, just don't volunteer to do both tracks. Focus on one area.
Yeah.
And speaking of all these sort of tips and tricks for concentrating just on like interesting little tips and tricks around doing a virtual event and kind of what some of the stressful points are, or kind of more difficult parts are. Maggie, I know you've got experience with doing a bunch of virtual. What would you say are kind of those really key things you need to focus in on?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different things that are significantly different in ways that can either really help or make it a different experience in ways that you might not like as much. I think one of the biggest advantages of virtual is that you can choose events that fit with your personality. We talked earlier about some events wanting an MC who is super loud and kind of bombastic and maybe even a little abrasive as the tone of that event and the character of that community. Whereas other events want someone who is maybe very quiet and put together, and people might have different types of hosting that they feel comfortable with, but very few people are going to actually enjoy that whole spectrum fully. And so because you're in a virtual environment, it doesn't matter which one is closest to you. You can pick them based on which one is the best fit for you, rather than just which one is maybe geographically nearest. One of the biggest disadvantages, though, is that there is no ops team in your house generally to bring you water. And so when I am emceeing a virtual event, I will have a row of drinks lined up to the left of my laptop. I've got my first water. I've got maybe some hot water, some tea for after that first one runs out. I've got a vacuum that has arrived in my room, speaking of not having an ops team for virtual events. Roomba turned off. I will have usually at least 2 drinks per hour set up next to my laptop. And I might not drink all of them, but running out of water while you're trying to MC a virtual event and you're live is the worst. You do not want to experience it. And like maybe you're lucky and you have a roommate or a spouse or someone you can text to get the emergency water, but you might not have that. And so planning in advance for that is critical. Another thing is that you don't get the crowd feedback. And so that does make it a little bit trickier in some cases to stay up and excited. And one of the things that I've done is focus on doing the prep in advance. And I write myself a little script for what I'm going to say between each set of talks to at least base it off of while I'm learning about who this person is and what their talk's about for the very first time. So I can capture that excitement in the script. And then even if we are 6 hours into my shift and I'm not really feeling it anymore, I can kind of feed off of my own past excitement about this person and this talk so that I can give it back to the audience, who are also 6 hours into sitting there and they're staring at a screen and not even speaking. So it's even more tiring for them, I think, in many cases. But my biggest thing I do differently, and this is the trick that I was trying to not derail with earlier, I set up an improvised teleprompter when I'm emceeing from home. So I use my laptop as my primary screen. It has a webcam at the very top of it. I have a secondary monitor behind it, and I prep in advance all of my sponsor listings, my speaker bios, if I need a note to remind myself of someone's name pronunciation. I write it all into a text document. I change the width so that it's about 1/3 the width of my laptop screen, and I position the window so that a couple of lines of the text are directly above the webcam. So I'm only moving my eyes back and forth between a little bit to the side of the webcam on each side of the screen. I have all the information I need so I don't forget any sponsors or important announcements, and I can just scroll through it as I'm talking so that it is very unnoticeable that I am in fact reading from a script most of the time. That's my secret. Credit to Flea. I'm trying to give away my Legos.
Yeah,
Everyone else.
That's actually pretty good.
I made it up, but I love it. I want more people to have this trick in their toolkit.
Actually,
Yeah,
I've
that
already
is
done it
potentially.
for myself here.
Yeah.
I already do.
Every day you get to learn new things, and I think we all just learned a new trick there. So thank you. And hopefully everyone in the audience, whether they are planning to MC or maybe if they're planning to speak at a upcoming event, can leverage that one, because I know speaking as well as MCing for a virtual event, you have that problem of where do I look for my notes? And yeah, just
absolutely.
That's kind of what my third monitor did. It was just right above my camera. So I was looking at the monitor, but it kind of looked like I was looking at the camera. Works really well.
Sneaky. So kind of for the next thing, we've talked about like how do we get prepped? How do we like hype everyone up? How do we make sure we're very hydrated? What is it though that speakers can do to help out those trying to, you know, introduce them, hype them up, and get them to have a good event? And Jives, can you maybe give us some ideas about anyone out there who is interested in being a speaker, what they can do to help the volunteers out?
Well, the easiest thing they can do is respond to all the emails, because, you know, we're sending something, we're saying, hey, you have this time slot you need to be here at. And if you can't make it, fine. Just let us know in advance, you know, work with us. You know, the things they can do is they can check in with you in advance so that you kind of know they're there. One thing we do with Sky Talks is that we have some like backup speakers. If we don't hear from them, you know, and we get too close to the day, we have other people we can call in. And we've also all decided, you know, we generally have a conversation beforehand and say, okay, well, if we had to make something up on the spot, there's something we can talk about.
That's exactly how Old Timers versus Noobs got started, and it got so popular that DEF CON picked it up with Drunk Hacker History.
So, you know, it's that sort of thing. It's being prompted is something they can do. Keeping the dialogue open. You know, if they're having a problem because personal issues, they can't be there until later, you know, or they're not going to get in until, you know, when you're at DEF CON, you're talking a 4-day event. You know, Sky Talks is about 3 of them. Well, if they can't be there until Saturday, just let us know in advance so we can work that into the schedule. And the one thing I really have to ask them to do is, you know, take it easy on the staff. Sometimes we're kind of overwhelmed. I mean, we have a lot of things we're having to do. We're having to, you know, manage them. We're having to manage other things. We're having to help out someplace else sometimes when you get a large event, you know, and sometimes, you know, we make mistakes. The last in-person Sky Talks, we had some speaker problems pretty much all over the place. You know, we had on sending out emails, we had an off by 1 error that meant that the wrong people got their emails. Hey, you don't have to worry about it, because I also, you know, there were other mistakes made during that one. For some reason, I could not keep 2 of our speakers straight, and I would email one when I was meant to email the other one. Their handles were very similar. Luckily, they actually knew each other, so it's like when I sent one person the wrong information, they're like, "Oh, here's what they meant to send you." They just knew each other, so we kind of worked it out. You know, they worked out behind the scenes, but I mean, I just could not keep those 2 emails addresses straight. One of the things I want to do in the future is automate it a little more, because I was doing too much cut and pasting, and that's where I screwed up. But, you know, just, you know, accepting that, you know, they're also human. They've got a lot of things happening, especially on a bigger event. You know, it's something that speakers can really do is kind of, you know, recognize that there's a lot of stuff happening. As much as we want to be there for them, they're not the only person we have to be there for. You know, but there are things that we can also do for them. I know having a green room is a great thing. If you have a space that you can set aside that gives them some quiet, or if they want to have, like, you know, their partner there so they can kind of, you know, talk it out. making sure you supply them with water and stuff like that. One of the things I did at the last Sky Talks that I want to do it again is that, and this was actually more for the MCs than anything, I printed up something that had each of them. It had the title, it had the names, their pronouns, what the time slot was, and it had a space that you can put in notes. So when they would check in, I'd say, is there anything you want the MC to know? And so we could write it on there if there was something like pronunciations or something like that. We can write in there. And then when, because we were a large enough operation that we actually had somebody who actually did the liaison stuff. And so they'd walk them into the room and they would basically be able to hand that to the MC. And so that, we can kind of have that written in advance and prepare them for it. That's something I would like to see. I'm going to do it again. I think others should probably do that too, because it makes it a little easier for the MC also.
As someone who was one of those speaker liaisons, that did help a lot, because I didn't have to try to remember what to tell the MC about the person and how to pronounce a name, or whether it was a he or she or him or her or whatever. But the other thing that was kind of unique to DEF CON about that I didn't know until I helped out at Sky Talks was at DEF CON, they obviously, your first time speakers get a shot of alcohol when they are sometime during it. And what I didn't realize, there were some speakers who that shot was of water or Coke or something, because they don't drink. And as somebody who I don't drink either, that I was like, oh my gosh, I never knew that was an option. And so just a little weird thing about DEF CON that I noticed just from volunteering at Sky Talks at one time.
Yeah, sometimes we kind of mislead people and say, it's vodka or something, it's kind of more the joke of the thing.
Yeah.
Most of the time it is alcohol, but again, somebody who doesn't want alcohol, so we give them something else.
Yeah.
That's a common misconception though, right? I know that because I don't drink myself. So when it came time to volunteer, I was like, but how am I going to fit in if I don't drink? And I had this stereotypical view of no, everyone just drinks there. And I was like, am I going to fit? But that's thank you for bringing that up, because that's not the case at all.
Yeah. You can always fill your hip flask with iced tea. We won't notice.
Or honestly, there's a whole bunch of people in the InfoSec community right now that are making amazing mocktails. And I'm going to forget the name of the person, but there's a couple that ran PhysiCon at ShmooCon, the last in-person ShmooCon, which was all mocktails. So I would like everyone to collectively start upping their game on their non-alcoholic drinks.
Yeah. Shrubs are good.
I've come up with some excellent personal mocktail recipes during this quarantine, in my own opinion, and would be happy to share if anyone is interested.
Actually, if you go to the Cocktail Con site, that's they actually have a section on shrubs, which are non-alcoholic drinks that you can make.
And they take submissions if you're willing to share.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one other thing that I really wish more speakers would do that hasn't come up yet is when you do make that first in-person contact, please say your name. Hi, I'm the next speaker does not give me confidence that I am correctly remembering my attempts to find you introducing yourself on YouTube. And there have been a couple speakers who just never say their own name in any of their talks, where I have literally been unable to find an example to know whether I'm pronouncing this person's name correctly. And it's so much less awkward for everyone if you just say hi, I'm Margaret, I'm giving the next talk.
Yeah, that's actually a really good anecdote, especially as you continue on in this community and become more famous. You will remember certain people, but you will not remember a lot of people, even though you see them at a lot of conferences, and it's etc. And everyone kind of expects you to know them, but you end up in a vacuum in a lot of the time. So that's actually a good suggestion, not only just for speakers coming up next, but when especially if you're circulating at a lot of cons, and you don't interact with that person more than once, twice a year, maybe, remind them of who you are and maybe a little bit of context. It will certainly help. I know it does with me.
And
Well,
I know
Serpent
as
Swarm
I've
does-
yep, you can go ahead.
she does a great thing with actually having tags, and so I've gotten tags made for myself now, and it has.
Yeah, I've got 2 of them.
I have necklaces so that people can tell what preferred name I'm using for the particular event.
That's good too. That's definitely good.
And I was just going to say also that, I've circulated the conference scene a lot. And so I know there's a lot of people that know me. I don't necessarily know them, but they kind of think I do because they follow me on Twitter or something like that. And it's just like,
yeah, that's my problem.
I always try not to make the assumption that people know who I am or, I know who everybody is. It's definitely even like I've even went to a conference where I knew the organizer knew me, but just to make sure, like, oh, hi, I'm Sarah. Oh, I know who you are. It doesn't matter. Like, I just want to make sure, you're aware of that.
And some people have face blindness, so they will literally not ever remember your face. So giving them that name or that handle to work off of will help them drastically.
Definitely.
I will call out Defiant Olaf on this one. He would introduce himself to me every year because I would get new glasses. And every year he'd be like, hi, I'm Deviant. Who are you? It's like, it's Amazon V because this is pre-handle change. And he'd be like, oh, never mind. I'd be like, it's okay. And like, it's completely fair. I didn't mind. It was just a funny thing because I knew I changed my glasses and I changed my hair color. So especially for those of you who like fashion, if you're going to change your glasses and your hair and your necklaces and different colored dresses and whatever, there are people who are not going to be able to recognize you out of context. So just give them that hint.
Open back up and we're wearing masks at conferences, that's probably going to be even worse.
Yep. And so to bring this home, once a speaker speaks, they end up in kind of 2 situations. One, they have a Q&A and people are asking them questions, or 2, they don't stop speaking. So Blue, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you handle non-questiony questions and people who just don't want to leave the stage.
Ball gags.
You cannot actually do that to speakers for anyone listening as a note.
Depends on the conference. They in all fairness, I try and prep speakers beforehand. I'll say, yeah, we're targeting this amount of item. And work with them. How do you want to get noticed? Usually I have some pre-printed and laminated signs. We've gone back and forth whether black on a solid color or doing colored numbers works best. I think the black on the solid color works best, and give them specific time tags. Usually it's a 10, 5, and stop, or in Sky Talks we just like STFU. But I will, if I'm doing this, or I encourage my other people to do it, I'll tell them to hold the sign up, be like at the center of the room in the back, where you're not obtrusive, but where the speaker can see you, and keep holding the sign up until most good speakers, or even not so good speakers, will give you some kind of acknowledgement, whether it's a subtle nod or a quick thumbs up, something like that they see the item, and will work on that, and they'll start wrapping that up. Which brings me to the next item. What happens when the speaker won't actually start wrapping it up as quickly? And at that point, you kind of have to start getting, maybe not physical with the speaker, but giving motions like roll it up, we need to get done. Sometimes I will just raise my hand and bring it like a closed fist of we need to close this down. And there have been 1 or 2 times where I just reach over to the soundboard and go, you're done here. You can't hear them anymore. That was one of the things that we ended up having to do with that talk that went off the rails a few years ago, where they started stripping. And then you start having people hustle them off the stage while the MC starts apologizing profusely for what was really not supposed to happen. But I'm getting off the rails here. After
Would you
that,
say that that's a lot easier now that we have like Zoom and whatever, and you could just like click stop people?
yes, absolutely so. And you bring up an item that I didn't think of, because I'm speaking from a purely in-person point of view here of how we've done stuff. And I haven't had because of the way SkyTalks operates, I haven't had the experience on how to give some of those time points in a virtual type setting where a speaker may be so focused on their slides or on their notes that they're not looking at the side chat from, oh, I need to wrap this up. And I don't have a good solution for that. I would, as soon as I get done here, I'd like to see if anyone else has any items. I'd like to run through my other items really fast here. Second item, Q&A. Depending on how well the speaker is time stuff, some speakers will go way short on their time slots, and you'll have a lot of time for Q&A. Some speakers will run right up and even past their limit, which becomes their own problems, because then you have the cascading effect of all of your talks start sliding backwards. The best thing that we've found, and more conferences are doing this, are starting to provide separate Q&A or breakout spaces, where if you've got where you're expecting longer Q&A, or you want to give your speakers somewhere to interact with people afterwards, that's a separate space other than everyone bum rushing the stage afterwards to start asking questions, especially if you've got a 5 or 10 minute cycle time where not only you need to cycle the room, but you need to cycle the speakers and get the next speaker set up and ready to go. That becomes an additional problem. So something to work on, and probably something that the conferences or events need to work on, is how can we provide this space afterwards so that we don't have to break the interactivity and make hard breaks on this. At least that's the best way I've been able to do it. If you've got the time or you've got a good Q&A session going, you kind of have to tap the speaker on the shoulder and say, I know you want to keep this going, but we kind of have to move this offside so that the next speaker can get set up and we can continue moving with the event. And sometimes you got to be maybe not the bad guy, but you got to be the voice of reason on that. And that's not always easy. You have to find the strength of personality to do so. And I know I sometimes have to find that in myself, because I try and be easygoing with people as well, what other people may believe a plus or minus here. So I think that covers about everything on that question. Let me take a look really fast. Yeah, I think that touched that here. Does anyone have any comments on how to give time cues and kind of interact with the speaker as things are wrapping up when you're in a virtual environment? I'd love to hear that.
Cell phones. Get the speaker's cell phone info. Have them turn off all of the dings, obviously, but have them open like the WhatsApp or the Signal or whatever chat with just you. That's worked for some speakers. I generally ask the speaker what is going to work best for them. For some people, it's, pop onto the screen. Don't say anything, but like just pop in so that they can see that somebody else has joined that session at like the 10-minute mark or whatever. And then other people, it's use my cell phone. So I've left it up to the speaker. And if they didn't have a preference, I was like, I'll do the pop in situation, because that's a little bit harder to miss. What has everybody else tried?
And I was going to say, on Zoom, you can send direct messages to people. So definitely, and it'll pop up on the lower part of their window. So definitely, you have 5 minutes left, you have 3 minutes left. Shut up, because you're about to run out of time.
My concern is, what if they're really hyper focused and they don't notice those?
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the case where you just have to kind of keep at it. And then, there's not much you can do if they're not paying attention. You just got to shoo them off eventually. Like, oh, we're out of time. Sorry.
I will say for sure
Click.
that I've never had the Zoom message fail and then anything else succeed. If they don't see the Zoom message, they also don't see the Signal or the WhatsApp. They don't hear you making dings in their Slack. They've got all eyes on their slides, and there's nothing else you can add to the system that's going to really help.
Yeah, I kind of wait until there's like somewhat of a pause, because sooner or later they're gonna have to like take a breath and be like, so this was so great, right? Who wants to hear about the next one? And then kind of and because we're supposed to be PR for the conference too, right? Then complimenting the conference, we're getting such cool speakers, complimenting the speaker that they were so engaging that we didn't even realize that the time has passed, even though we all realized that the time has passed, But it's all about PR at the end.
Yeah. And Barcamp Philly, which I was kind of a room MC for, they did kind of the same thing where you could send direct messages over Discord, because that's where we had it in kind of work there too. But also we told the speakers ahead of time, like, we will come in and announce how much time you have left. So they knew we were physically coming on to announce over the microphone how much time they had left.
Awesome. So yeah,
be a thing you do on remote conferences, which is like, you have to pay attention, or I'm coming in and
muting you. Like, that is the button that you have available but don't necessarily want to leverage.
Actually, and I did really remember something else that I'm not sure why I forgot earlier that speakers can do to help. Bring all their equipment. If we had to find you some bizarre, video adapter because you're running, a 10-year-old computer that had something specialized, we're not going to have it.
Yeah.
We'll
bring it, or make certain that it's upfront that you need that in the CFP.
Yeah. Or even like, as soon as you get there, I forgot my adapter. Can somebody at the organizer conference help? And we can reach out to other speakers and be like, hey, does anybody have a mini display port to micro HDMI? Like, who the heck has that? I don't know, but maybe one of our speakers might have that kind of awkward adapter and can let you borrow it. And
over the years, we've
like whoever said it, just let organizers know as soon as possible about something. That's exactly one of those cases.
Over the years, SkyTalks has accumulated a fair pile of miscellaneous adapters, partially to try and avoid that situation. But then eventually, yes, we need this adapter. Okay, who's going to make the fries run? I'm going to miss fries.
I've seen an adapter come from the crowd. We've had to announce before one conference, hey, does anybody in the crowd have this? And somebody in the crowd saved the talk. So,
yeah.
And you just hope it was a safe adapter and not somebody's OMG cable.
Hey, I need to put my talk on a USB drive. Okay, here's my USB killer stick.
We have had that request, and I've always felt awkward about it. So I think that kind of brings us to the end of kind of what we were trying to cover, but I'm going to kind of do a quick flip through. So if you have one or two events that you really want to like tell everyone are awesome and they should volunteer for, or if you know of a CFP that's open that you're reviewing things for, they should apply for, I'll quick cycle through and everyone can do their plug. And everyone can check the comments because everyone's handles have popped up in the comments throughout, and they'll be in the description on YouTube underneath, so you can find everybody online. So let's go ahead and start with Sarah. Is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, so I bounce conferences a lot, so I'm now one of the organizers for Bang Bang Con, which is 10-minute talks about joy, surprise, and excitement of computing. And this is the one conference that every time I go, I just leave super excited about tech and wanting to just like do all the side projects and fall in love with computing and everything all over again. And our event is coming up the middle of May, I believe. I'm going to quickly try to look that date up real quick. We just finished our CFP, so unfortunately you can't submit anymore. It closed yesterday. But May 15th to 22nd. It's bangbangcon.com. And it's seriously, like, even before I organized, I said, this is the best conference I've been to out of 60 something conferences I've been to in my life. So I highly recommend it. It's going to be all digital this year, so check it out.
And I have posted that link in the chat for anybody who wants to go ahead and check it out and make sure they can attend. What about Monsi? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, so in June of this year, we're giving our second Cyber Jitsu conference, and this time there's a track specifically for first-time speakers. If you needed that nudge, consider this to be that nudge to apply for the CFP or volunteer, right? And I want to say, like, I know we've given a lot of tips and tricks on how to kind of have a successful volunteer thing, but more than that, there's just passion, right? If you didn't have passion for the industry or for the topic, you're not going to be able to do any of the things that we've mentioned. So, and I think if you have that, then everything else becomes, it'll all happen, you know, and it's good time kind of thing. So, yeah.
All right, great. And Margaret, what have you got?
Well, I only have redundant plugs right now because we're in that uncanny valley between CFPs closing and volunteers opening for most of the conferences that I'm volunteering with right now. But shout out again to IntroSecCon. The link is already in the chat from earlier. That'll be on April 17th. They are still open to sponsorships. If any of you are working for a large company that likes to throw money at conferences, it's a really great conference for anyone who's interested in getting into information security or learning some basics. There are some super exciting talks coming up this year, and I'm very excited to see them. Also, the Diana Initiative has a call for volunteers open right now, and I am not one of the organizers of the Diana Initiative, so I have a slightly less biased opinion of it. And out of the probably dozen events I organized with or volunteered with last year, it was one of my favorites. So strongly recommend the Diana Initiative as a great volunteering opportunity.
And our CFP is still open, so y'all should apply.
Ooh, TIL.
All right. Next up, I've got Brendan.
Yeah. Probably the thing I'm most excited about right now is the ICS Village for industrial control systems. I've helped out with their Capture the Flag a few years in a row, running their Capture the Flag event. It's a little bit different because everything's virtual with the ICS Village for the next several months still at least. But they're going to have something with the virtual DEF CON, the virtual RSA conference. And then one I'm really excited about is their fourth Hack the Capitol, which is where we take hackers to Washington, D.C. and meet some congressional staff. We've had some actual congressmen there and stuff. And so that's always a really cool one.
And I think I've got ICS Village linked. Is Hack the Capitol got a website, or is that just a Twitter?
I believe it's just through the icsvillage.com link.
Okay.
It may have its own website. I'm not sure on that.
So everyone just go to the ICS link I posted and look for it. You'll find it. And Jives, what have you got to plug?
Well, actually, I've already plugged it a couple times, and Margaret's plugged it. And IntroSecCon's coming up, week from tomorrow. Wow, it's fast. It's soon. The Diana Initiative, I cannot say enough how much I do like working with that. It is great. Then, let's see. I don't know what's, we've already announced that Sky Talks isn't happening this year, unfortunately. I'd say just find some good ones, something that is virtual that is interesting to you. There are a lot of good ones out there, and the fact that it's virtual means you don't have to worry about traveling. You can get into the bathroom as soon as you want. You have an unlimited supply of whatever you want to drink.
Yeah, the food and drink at the virtual cons is a lot better than they are in person sometimes.
So much cheaper, too.
Yes, so much cheaper, especially at Vegas prices.
Which actually brings us to you, Blue. What would you like to plug about?
Well, I would say find your local B-sides. B-sides are all over the planet, and they're almost always looking for volunteers, especially the small hometown ones like B-sides Boulder or something like that. They're just getting started. They're going to be looking for people, both experienced and not, and it's a good way to get started and get known. Sky Talks has become...
What are B-sides if you don't know what those are?
B-sides, those where to begin with B-sides. I think long story short,
you have 10 seconds, go.
They're the B-sides. They're the opposite side. They were originally designed as the opposite side of Black Hat Talks, because there were a lot of speakers who got rejected one year and they thought, this is right, we've got good stuff. So they rented a mansion in Vegas, and they threw their own conference. And it really took off from there. And 501c3 came up, and it just, it's exploded. It's probably the biggest grassroots movement in the industry. And I hate talking about InfoSec as an industry, but...
I promise you have one near you. I posted the link to their front page. They are global. They are all over the place. And if there is not one near you and you want to have one, you can create one. So
yes, I have 2 within 20 miles of me. So that's security B-sides is a good way to get started. I know that a lot of people, including people at DEF CON, look at Sky Talks almost as a filter for getting started with volunteering in a larger item at DEF CON. And we've had people walk up and offer to volunteer. I don't know them at all. And I'll say, okay, here's a grunt badge. Here's what we'd like you to do. And the next thing you know, we have these people as senior staff. It's worked out very well, and you get to learn and meet a lot of new people, and you get to develop a lot of new skills. And there's various events in between. I know that ShmooCon doesn't really do a call for volunteers. It's almost an item of you need to be chosen more than you need to volunteer, but ShmooCon has been a lot of fun. DEF CON is the same way, and you can get noticed that way if you start putting effort out. And there's a lot of smaller villages at DEF CON. ICS is a great example. The Blue Team Village.
Internet of Things.
Internet of Things. Biohacking. Well, Blue Team and Biohacking are 2 villages that were neighbors from Sky Talks that we pretty much overran with our line cons in various years, and they have turned out really well. So there's a lot of various volunteering opportunities in events,
and
both
just
big and small.
Follow all of us on Twitter. I'm sure you
follow
will find
all of us on Twitter.
Other things to volunteer for. But,
we spam out opportunities all the time.
But now we are 10 minutes over, 12 minutes over. I thank everyone for hanging on for the extra 10 minutes. And so I will let everyone get back to their lovely Friday night plans. And I really appreciate all of you coming on and sharing all of this. And hopefully we have encouraged some people to speaker wrangle at their local event.
Yeah, you've been a lovely audience. Tip your waitress and try the veal. We'll be here all weekend.